evening. I'd like to call the August 27th, 2020 Wilson School Board special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper? Here. Dr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mrs. Cocker?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. McCrae?
Here.
Mr. Negrini?
Here.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
And Mr. Hart?
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the pledge to the flag. I'll turn it over to Attorney Luke.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm not John Morales, but I work with him, and I appreciate you having me here tonight. Can you take a look at the comments and announcements?
Yeah, do that, and that way it's already covered.
Just to cover the issue of public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. In order to speak, you must be a resident or a taxpayer in the district. Public comments are not a question and answer session and should be civil. I'll keep time, just in case any go over, I'll give you an indication that your time is up. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone who is either online tonight or in person, and for all the emails we've received over the past couple weeks. It was really nice to see how people were able to put themselves out there and really be passionate about what they do and what the children do, and the children what they do. And I just want to say thank you, everyone. I want to say thank you to everyone for doing that. It was nice to see. So I will turn it over to, tonight's meeting is a vote for fall sports to proceed or to stop. And what we did a week and a half ago was we voted to give support of a letter to PIAA giving them support. That wasn't our decision on sports or not. So tonight, according to their guidelines, we at the local school level have to vote for or against fall sports. So Dr. Faley, I'll turn it over to you real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hart. I just want to make an announcement for the individuals who are speaking in public comment this evening, that there is the likelihood that the information is being recorded by a media source and may be used for their nightly newscast in the event that they do choose to do so. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that when they are doing their public comments.
Thank you.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, please.
Under the communications section this evening, I've asked Dr. Trickett and Mr. Kaufman to share a presentation with you about how we got to where we are today regarding our past 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever it's been, with our health and safety plan, how we've come about some of the protocols that we've established in there, and how our coaches and our student athletes have been abiding by these health and safety guidelines. In my presentation to the community the other evening, I made a statement that I was extremely proud of our coaches and our athletes, and I want to do that in the public realm because I do think that as the Wilson School District, we are the leaders in the community, in the county, and our actions are looked upon. And we're here this evening to be open and transparent in our communication so that there is clarity. Whatever the decision the board arrives at, we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to voice their opinions. So Dr. Trickett and Mr. Kaufman, would you please come forward?
Thank you, Dr. Faley, for the introduction and for the summary, really, of why we're here this evening. Mr. Kaufman and I are here. I'd like to thank the board. I know that your job is oftentimes thankless. I know that you put in a ton of hours and that you have very busy lives outside of this school district. And as an employee here, also a parent in the school district, I know I speak on behalf of the entire community when I say thank you for everything that you do to support our kids and to try to guide us in the right direction. I also want to extend a thank you and appreciation to our head coaches. Our director of bands, Mr. Cooper, is also here this evening. Our head athletic trainer, Kieran Melograno, is also Mrs. Lennon, who is not here, but our director of theater programs at our high school, for all the work that they've done throughout this process, which Drew will go in depth about in a few moments. They've done everything they can to follow the health and safety plan. And as we've mentioned time and time again to our staff and to our community, it's not perfect. But we believe it's a solid plan. And we believe that our coaches, our athletes, our parents really have done everything that they can to do all the things that we've asked them to do over the last week, which really brings us to where we are today. So I want to talk a little bit about the timeline that Dr. Faley discussed and bring us up to today, why we're here, why this meeting was called, why it's a special meeting, and why we felt that it was prudent to do it today as opposed to waiting maybe to another week coming down the road where we had a previously scheduled meeting. And I'm not going to go through the timeline in detail, but you see that the work really started back in April. And it's hard to believe that we've been out of school for that long, but April 9th was the day that the PIAA established their first tentative start date for voluntary activities, voluntary workouts, voluntary participation. And since that time, we've been working with a team of people to develop a health and safety plan that we thought was appropriate, that we thought would keep our staff and our students and our community safe. We brought that to our board on June 22nd for your consideration. We brought that same plan back to this board on 2 different occasions with modifications, with adjustments, trying our best as a local school district to follow the ever-changing guidance and requirements that we're getting from the state, the Department of Health, from the CDC. We've tried our best to stay on top of all those different pieces in conjunction with our local health officials. So that speaks to the kind of the progression here. And we probably will bring our health and safety plan back to you again. We see it as an ongoing process throughout the fall and hopefully into the winter and spring. You see that on August 5th and 11th, the LL League and the BCIAA set their start dates for fall sports. Those are the start dates that this school district right now, the Wilson School District, based on the leagues that we participate in, will be following. There was an update from the governor on August 6th, where he recommended that no interscholastic recreational sports should be played until January 1st. And this was a shift in direction. Just like he's getting new information, we're also receiving that information. So just a few weeks ago, the community, the state, started to say, well, what does that mean? What does a recommendation mean versus maybe an executive order versus a mandate? So lots of research, lots of conversation and communication went into that. On August 18th, the board, as discussed previously, issued a letter of support. And that letter of support was basically showing that we're supporting the position at that time of the PIAA. That letter was drafted the next day and sent to the different organizations that are listed up on this screen. We then had the meeting of the PIAA where they approved August 24th as a start date for some activities. Again, we're following the dates that were set in the previous bullet point. We then met again as an extracurricular committee. The board functions through a committee system where there are board representatives that work along our team to try to recommend pieces to the board to guide the school district and to lead our community. And we met again on the 24th, which is what leads us to this meeting today. It came out of our committee to recommend bringing this group back together to make sure you had all of the information that you need to make a decision. And really the decision today, from my perspective, is, are we ready to start our fall season? It's not really, are we ready to end the fall season, but do we have enough? Do we feel that we have a solid plan in place to get started, to give it a try? So I do have up here the press release document with some additional details for everyone. Some of these pieces were already discussed. Talked about the fact that the PIAA, although they made a decision, it was under the premise that the local school district, our board, the elected officials we have, should make the ultimate decision whether or not we can start fall sports as scheduled or not. So again, we're here tonight asking the board to consider allowing our coaches and our kids the chance to start the fall season. I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. Kaufman, who will do an overview of our health and safety plan.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett, and good evening, everyone. Appreciate you having me. As Dr. Trickett stated, I wanted to provide a brief overview of our health and safety plan, and I hope to be able to clarify a few key items for you. First, I think it's important to understand how we created our plan. Kiernan, our certified athletic trainer, and I spent a lot of time reviewing guidance from various health and professional agencies such as the CDC, the PDE, the Governor's Office. We collaborated with colleagues from throughout the state of Pennsylvania. We participated on a number of virtual meetings and calls with athletic directors and athletic trainers and shared ideas and best practices. And through those efforts, we ultimately put our plan together. Once we had a shell of a plan put together, we consulted with some of our coaches and fellow administrators to obtain additional feedback and finalized our plan. And once we did that, we ultimately had our district-approved team physician, Dr. David O'Rourke, also review the plan and approve it, which he did prior to us submitting it to all of you for ultimate full approval. So as you can see, it was a tremendous team effort to develop our health and safety plan. Now, if you've ever reviewed our plan, you should be familiar with the classification of sports and activities that are involved with the plan. We have 3 classifications of our activities: the high risk, the moderate risk, and the low risk. And we developed those classifications and placed our teams and activities into those classifications based on guidance from the National Federation of State High School Associations, or the NFHS. Another important aspect of our health and safety plan is what we call our phases of participation. We have 4 phases. The first 3 phases correspond or align with the, what the governor used to call the red, yellow, and green phases. And then we created phase 4, which is our full return to activity phase. Now, I think it's important to understand that as a district, when we received approval to have our teams begin voluntary workouts on July 1st, we decided to take a very intentional approach to returning to play. By that I mean, despite being able to start in phase 3 because we were in green on July 1, we implemented a phased-in approach that required our teams to spend 10 days in phase 2 before progressing to phase 3. Next slide, please, Ryan. And what that means really is that when they were in phase 2, it was a very controlled, non-contact type of environment. It was focused on individual skill development and conditioning. And the reasoning behind that was really twofold. Number one, it was to help our athletes reacclimate back into their sport. And number 2, it gave us an opportunity to implement and test our health and safety plan. And I think that went well. Again, once they spent 10 days in phase 2, they were allowed to progress to phase 3. And in phase 3, that essentially allowed them to return to the types of activities they really would have done during the summer of any pre-COVID activities. We allowed contact practices to begin for all of our sports once they entered phase 3. They also would be allowed to compete against other schools for the low risk and moderate risk activities. However, we did not allow that to occur during phase 3. So where are we now? Where are we today? And Dr. Trickett had mentioned this a little bit. So this past Monday, our cross-country, girls tennis, and golf teams progressed into phase 4, returned to full activity, while our other teams have remained in phase 3. Our other teams, if we are allowed to move forward this evening, will progress to phase 4 when they hit their first official practice date, which are listed on the screen here for you. So having said all of that, as the Director of Athletics for the Wilson School District, I think it's important for me to provide my perspective. We've been working this plan for the past 8 weeks. I believe the plan is strong, and I believe the plan is working. I believe in our administrative team, who has been very supportive throughout our return to play process, and I believe in our coaches, who have really embraced the plan and done their best to implement the guidelines that are contained in it. I believe in our athletic training staff, who have been critical not only in the development of the plan, but in the enforcement of the plan. I believe in our students, and I believe in our families. I believe that all of us together can create a safe, healthy, positive, and fun environment for our students. And with all that being said, I strongly believe that our students deserve the opportunity to participate in fall sports. So I thank you for your consideration. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Trickett.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. So in any situation, anytime our children really leave the house, and especially in this environment, there is some risk involved. And part of the conversation that occurred in our extracurricular committee earlier this week was from the district's perspective, from a community perspective. You know, how do we help ensure that there are safeguards in place and also that we're protected? So something that was part of our health and safety plan, a piece that we implemented from day one, before our voluntary practices and participation were able to begin, was a participation waiver. The participation waiver is on our website. I also took a screenshot of it and placed it onto our slide deck today, just to make sure that the parents understand. They understand that there is inherent risk in participating, that there is a conversation that occurs in the family, so that the students are just not doing this in isolation. The second piece that we've looked into with the help of our team, our legal team as well as our finance team, is our insurance policy from a district, making sure that our comprehensive policy would protect the district in the event that there is a situation where we would need support and protection. I will say that in this particular piece, it's critical that we follow our health and safety plan. It's critical that the people behind me, their families, our student athletes, the participants, do their part, as Mr. Kaufman says. There are many pieces to our plan, and in order for the plan to be successful and to work, all of those pieces really need to be done with fidelity. So again, for those that are here and for those that are watching from home, to our student athletes that I know want desperately to start in the next few days, please listen to your coaches, please listen to your advisors, and do your part to keep our fall sports and our fall programs running and our schools open. The last piece for me before I turn it back over to Dr. Fadley is what are our next steps? And obviously we have a vote. We have to hear from our community and then our board. But there are still pieces to this plan that we need to work out. We need to talk about capacities. We need to talk about what does the state say with regard to how many people are able to be in the different spaces that we have. We have all of that worked out in our school system, but we have competitions coming up. How does this apply to competitions? How does it affect spectators? Are we going to allow spectators? Are we not? Are we going to explore live streaming options? And all of these things are already in the works, but these would be the next pieces that we would bring before the board if the board would give us the go-ahead, the green light to move forward. And then the last thing that we need to continue to work through is what do we do, in the event that there is some challenging situations? And we've had some, right? All of us have been contacted and communicated with in regard to contacts, close contacts, all those different situations that have occurred in our community. And we will follow the exact same process that we've done. We're battle tested in this area. We're ready to go in this area because we have contacts in all of those different disciplines. We know the people from the Department of Health. We have contacts with our local health officials. And we will continue to follow their guidance and we'll make recommendations to this board as needed throughout the next few weeks or months to keep our student athletes, our participants, and our coaches safe. Thank you again for your time. That concludes our presentation. I'd like to turn it back over to Dr. Fadley.
So I would ask the board if they have any questions that they would like to ask either Dr. Trickett, Mr. Kaufman, or myself regarding the presentation or any specific questions that may not have been addressed that you would like to hear an answer to. So are there any questions from the board?
I was talking to one of the coaches, and just to have the sport occur would require more people in than those numbers. Like for a competition, having both teams, officials, all of that, all the pieces, how are we going to accomplish that?
One of the things that we've been exploring and getting guidance on, Mr. Snyder, is the fact that it may be permissible for us to set up zones within the confines of our facility. And I'll use the high school gym as a prime example. We have both a lower and an upper level. So we may be able to divide that into two zones to to accommodate the numbers that are associated with having two teams and coaches that may exceed 25, and then limit the number of other personnel so that we don't go above 50 total in the two zones. So we're exploring that. There are districts across the Commonwealth that are also doing that same exploration, and we're waiting on guidance from that. But we do believe that especially the way our setup is, that we can accomplish that and safely distance individuals and still meet the confines of what the recommendations are.
Thank you.
I had a question about testing. Now that our kiddos are back in school, right now, the state is not requiring schools to report any cases. So I'm wondering if someone discloses that they have been exposed, what are we doing with that information? And are we making an effort to contact parents? Because say that athlete then goes to in-person learning the next day, or what are we doing?
I can address maybe not completely, but parts of your question. In the Wilson School District, we've set up protocols and processes where we have screening stations as kids come into the school, and we've invested in what's called FLIR camera technology that helps to identify any child that may have an elevated temperature. And if they do, I'll use the term, if the camera flashes red, then they are taken to a secondary area and additional screening takes place by the school nurse. Now, in reference to your question regarding the reporting, we also have, obviously a partnership with our community. And up to this point, when school hasn't been in session, what we've been working on is students who are symptomatic, and I would consider our athletes students who are symptomatic, go and get tested. Once we are made aware of the symptoms and the testing, we work with the Department of Health. Dr. Hoffert communicates directly with the Department of Health and seeks their guidance on each particular situation. Now, it's important to realize that each situation that we come across is unique and different. So we need to make sure we share the details of that situation with the Department of Health so that they can provide that guidance so that they can implement some recommendations to us on what to do moving forward. But it ultimately is the family's responsibility to report to us, but we do have safety precautions in place in the event that students come with symptoms in our schools. Our nurses are prepared. We have tents and structures to isolate and all of those types of things across our district to make sure that we do the absolute best we can to mitigate.
Thank you.
I have a question in reference to something that Dr. Trickett said during the presentation, that we don't necessarily have a realistic expectation for the fall season to end, just that we get a chance to start it. So I'm wondering why that would be the situation that we find ourselves in.
I'll come up to the microphone so everyone from home can hear me. Mrs. Cucker, what I was trying to state in my comments was more, I feel that we have put together a solid plan. I feel that our coaches, our community, our athletes have implemented the plan to a very high degree. And what I personally was asking is for the board to allow the plan to continue, to get our kids engaged in competition that there's so much looking forward to. I think it's important that we're not looking 10 or 11 or 12 weeks down the road today. And I feel also as a leadership team and as a community, we're prepared and equipped to come back to this group if things change, just like we're doing in our school system. We didn't open our doors on day one assuming that we were going to keep them open maybe for 180 days. We're hopeful that that's the case. That's the most ideal plan. But we may have to continue to adjust based on the new information that we have. So that was the intent of my comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I could add, just to build upon that, I think it's important for us all to realize that as our student athletes, as our students have been sitting home since last March, the opportunity to get out and integrate with their peers is an extremely important piece of the educational experience. When we start looking at some of the data that is being shared with us from medical professionals regarding the increase in depression and suicidal ideations and all of those things, that information goes into our holistic look at our recommendation as administrators. We, like Dr. Trickett said, we feel that we have done everything that we can do, and we have people taking this very seriously. So our kids and our athletes, I believe, deserve the opportunity to have those rich experiences that make Wilson the special place that it is. And in the event down the road something happens and we have to come back and shift gears, let's hope that doesn't happen, then we're prepared to do that as well. But right now, we're in a good place, and our kids are in a good place. Their emotional health is in a good place. And that's part of why I feel so passionate about getting them back to the environments that they've become accustomed to.
One of the things I've been thinking about is I feel like we have a great plan here at Wilson. I trust our families, I trust our coaches. I don't trust other districts, that they're going to be as diligent as we are. I don't know that they even have the facilities like we do, like you said about the gym with the upper and the lower. What is our plan for our coaching staff and for our athletes if they go to another school and they deem that situation to be unsafe or not to the standards of Wilson's diligence on this, trying to keep them away from getting infected?
I would answer that this way. I have 100% faith in the coaches in this district that if they take their teams into an atmosphere that they feel is unsafe, they would stop, turn around, get back on the bus, and come back to Wilson. I don't think that our staff, based on all the hard work that they've done over the past 8 weeks, would jeopardize the rest of their season for one contest.
Are we going to get like a leeway? Like, are they going to have an opportunity to speak with the other district to make sure before we, pack up everybody on the bus and go and have to turn around? Like, will there be communication among districts?
Restate your question. Will there be communication on the trip?
No, I mean, before we pack up all 88 football players, are they going to be calling the school and say, what's your plan for us? How, what's your plan to keep everyone socially distanced?
Every school and every athletic program in the Commonwealth was required to submit a safety and health plan. So Mr. Kaufman would have that plan available at his fingertips to make sure it meets the standards that we would deem necessary for our athletes to attend their facility. And if it doesn't, he would bring that to our attention, and we would work with the administration there and indicate to them, if you don't do these things, we can't bring our athletes to your facility.
Dr. Fadley, if I may, just to clarify, I can assure you that other districts are taking this very seriously, and the line of communication is very much so open. So we're constantly on calls with other athletic directors from other leagues. What's your plan? What should we expect upon arrival? So we're exchanging that type of information prior to starting the season. So yes, we would have that information available.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Dr. Fadley. Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Oh, we do. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, we'll get there. And Dr. Trickett and Mr. Kaufman, thank you for your presentation. It's now time for public participation. Mrs. Carroll, I'll turn that over to you.
Speak to the board. 2 people are virtually, so we'll start with them. I have Brad Baver Sr. Okay. All right, then we'll go to Mr. Hop and give him a moment to speak to the board, or three minutes.
President Hart, members of the board, it's good to be back. I want to take the time to encourage this board to follow the recommendation of the PIAA and to follow the recommendation of your administration and permit all fall sports to continue as scheduled. The PIAA executive board voted by 80% to move forward. That was based on a unanimous recommendation of the sports medicine subcommittee made up of 18 professionals, 10 of which are licensed physicians in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Of those 18 members, 3 are residents of Berks County, 2 physicians, and one, John Doc Moyer, our longtime, newly retired trainer. They all have a ethical duty and a legal duty to make a recommendation to move forward, not only what's best interest of the athletes, but the best interests of their communities. They recommended safe. I encourage you to accept that recommendation. Since July 1st, when Wilson started up, my son is a 10th grader on the high school football team. Wilson has had, the football team alone has had 24 practices and 72 hours of practice. Not a single incident, and that's because of the coaches implementing your plan. When you trust your plan and they implement it, the plan works. Just like how you have social distancing in your schools, that's responsible. Trust your plan and things will work. And that's just one example of the amount of kids that have been on this campus since July 1. And there's no data that somehow they are bringing any form of infection to non-athletes or athletes themselves. Keeping in mind that since May, most teenagers in the Wilson community have been teenagers. They've gone out, they've hung out with friends, they've played basketball in people's driveways, they swim at swimming pools. Again, there's no data that somehow them acting as teenagers has been a risk to our community. And frankly, being in a sports program following this health and safety plan is more safe than telling these kids you're on your own. Because this is the biggest risk, and what I'm most frustrated with is the biggest kids in need. For example, let's use Reading. I mean, Reading School District is over 90% free and reduced lunch. Their school district is completely virtual through, I know, at least November, and their school board, and hopefully they'll reconsider, is basically canceling fall sports, leaving those kids with no options. We have at Wilson over 30% kids in the free and reduced lunch program, many in single-parent households, many without good supervision. These coaches are their lifeline for safety, both physically and mental health reasons. It would be absolutely crushing to people like my son and his teammates that have put in 72 hours of time since July 1 with not a problem to be then told, you know what, we're just going to say and pack it up and it's not safe. And crushing, I think, is an understatement. All we're asking is to give these kids a chance, just a chance. I mean, I drove up here today. There was at least 3 girls' softball games, youth softball games. Some looked to be about 6 years old playing in fields on our campus. Our 2 youth football teams, ages 8 through 13, have been practicing for 2 weeks on our campuses. Trust our families, trust our parents, trust your plan is all I ask. It's opportunity. That's the word of the day. We just want an opportunity. We don't want guarantees. All of us as parents of athletes are going into this with our hearts full and eyes wide open. That we know there's potential risk. There's potential risk in life, but you know what? These kids deserve an opportunity, because Wilson is not just a history class or a math class or a French class. Wilson is a culture. Wilson is this community, and this community is Wilson. And the individuals whose names are on these buildings that are on your campus, such as John Gursky, Roy Snyder, and George Mack, They have built this culture of success and commitment. And it goes well beyond some class that you could take online somewhere teaching you the ABCs or algebra. It's about who we are as a community and what makes us special. And to eliminate this opportunity to have these kids continue doing what they're doing would absolutely eviscerate this community. All we're asking for is an opportunity and a chance. Nothing more. No guarantees. Our eyes are open and our hearts are full. And we just want this opportunity. I'm here for my son. I'm here for his teammates. My former colleague on this board, George Mack, who I considered a personal friend, I'm here for him too. Because I know George would be here right now pleading with you to give these kids an opportunity. That's all we ask for is an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopp. Under 2.1, the administration of the Wilson School District recommends that the Board of Education approve competition fall sports in accordance with the actions voted upon by the PIAA representatives regarding the continuation of competitive fall sports and the provisions established in the Wilson Health and Safety Plan for the athletics. The board further authorizes the superintendent to make necessary modifications to the health and safety plan as necessary to respond to any changes from the Department of Education, Department of Health, PIAA, and the Governor of Pennsylvania. 2.2, request to approve the coaches and extracurricular staff as attached. I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Negrini first. Do we have a second? Mr. Case second. Any discussion? Mr. Negrini.
We are not the CDC. We're not the Pennsylvania Department of Health. We're not a panel of infectious disease experts. We are school board members elected to serve the interests of the community members. We have three important roles. We hire a superintendent to lead our district. We have a fiduciary duty to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer money. And we are to set policy that serves the best interests of all of our students. Over the past several months, Governor Wolf has ordered all of us across the Commonwealth as far as what we can and cannot do and where we can and cannot go. But he has finally taken a step back and made a recommendation as opposed to a mandate. And this recommendation is not based upon new data or scientific evidence. He walked off of a news conference making this flip remark about a recommendation, and Dr. Levine, the Department of Health Secretary, indicated that that was the case. It was a reactionary comment on what things were taking place in other states. The PIAA has given this district an opportunity to have a say in what we do for our community and have a say for what we can provide to our students. It's important to remember that based upon data as it exists today, 82% of our high school students and their families freely chose to attend in-person instruction. 80% of our students over at West are in-person instruction. 71% of our students over at Southern, in-person instruction. That's approximately 2,400 students that are eligible for sports and approximately 2,800 students eligible for all extracurricular activities that made a decision back when we provided three options to be here in person, to potentially expose their children to unknown risk. And at that time, when we rolled out those 3 different options, at no point did the school district imply, infer, or make any assurances that we would not have sports and extracurricular activities. They all, rightfully so, believed that we would provide these opportunities to their students, to their children, to their families. It's also important to remember that many of these students are the same students that stock the grocery store aisles, that work the registers at places where we're making purchases to take care of our families. They're the lifeguards that have provided many of our families a reprieve this summer to go out and enjoy some time. They're the same students that serve our ice cream, our coffee, deliver pizzas. They all believe in taking that risk, in taking that chance, in having that opportunity. And we, as a district, should be there for them. There have been too many opportunities that have been taken away from all of us, from all of our children, without any choice, without any say in the matter. And I refuse to be part of any decision that will take away any more of those opportunities. I believe it's incumbent upon this board to give our students a choice and a chance to participate in extracurriculars rather than being part of a system that has unilaterally made those decisions for others. I think it's fitting in my closing here to attribute the following quote to Johann Wolfgang von Goethe during the last 5 months and decisions that have been made that have impacted all of our lives. The dangers in life are infinite, and among them is safety. I implore all of us here tonight to vote to approve the item before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, I just want to add, first off, thank you for all the administration and teachers and staff for successful 2 days of opening the school. This is not, everything that I've witnessed as a board member, this has not been an easy task. The logistical nightmare of doing what we're doing here with the hybrid plan was not easy, and it is a little bit more expensive. It's taxing on all the individuals involved, and I thank you for that. Wilson has not taken the easy road here. Some districts have, whether they could or they couldn't. But I mean, what we are doing here, we are leading Berks County in how to open up correctly. So first off, I want to thank you. My son forgot his Chromebook on the first day of school. I had to go to the lower house to drop it off. He gets one exception for the entire year. But I went through the safety check plan. There was staff everywhere. Students were extremely happy to be back in school, and it was healthy to see, and it was great to see, and it made me very, very proud to be a part of the Wilson fabric. With that said, I believe we can do that with sports and theater and music as well. Everything that I have witnessed with regard to our health and safety plan and our communication plan, as a board member, we have been copied on any near misses, if you will, for lack of a better word. Self-quarantine, our procedures have all been stellar. I have watched coaches like Kim Underwood caring for their student athletes, socially distancing, our trainers, our coaches, Doug Doms in his personal life. As a scientist, I trust no one else more than our coaches of Wilson School District to help our students be successful in this plan. Our student athletes deserve a chance, and I'm happy that we're here today, and we're a school district that cares enough to try and do the right thing. So thank you for that, and
I'm absolutely voting yes to move forward, and I hope we all do as well.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Other discussion, comments? Mr. McCray?
I'd like to start by giving a big compliment to the Wilson community. In the relatively short time that I've been on this board, this is the issue that I've received the most communication on, and I have to say that every single one of those communications was extremely respectful, professional. Many of them came from students within the district, and I would hope that if myself or my own daughters were as passionate about an issue like that, they would communicate in the same way that they did to all of us. So first of all, thank you. There's a lot of vitriol and the maybe national arguments about politics, but I was extremely proud of all the professionalism and politeness that was shared in all the emails that were shared with us as the board. I'd like to say, and I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made tonight, that so much of school and so much of our experiences occur outside of the classroom, from social bonds to leadership to skills. And I think, Wilson has led, has been stated tonight, Wilson's led that in the community and in the county for a long time, and I hope we'll continue to lead in that area for a long time. I'm a parent of a daughter who's participated in the optional workouts since July. I've seen the protocols that have been put in place, the decisions that have been made, the activities that they've been participated in, and we've continued to have discussions about that, as I encourage all families to continue to have discussions about that. But we made the optional choice to participate and feel that the plan's been put in place, the plan has been implemented, has been done successfully. Extracurricular activities by their nature are optional. I fully understand that other families, other students may not have that same opinion. The great thing is, just like the plan to either attend in person or in-person lessons at our school, they can make the choice that they need to opt out here. I think this is a plan that we know is still going to be out of our control, so I do implore the entire community that all of us have a role in implementing and policing this plan, from the coaches to the staff to the parents to the students. With all the passion that's been surrounding, continuing and implementing fall sports, the only way we continue to do that is if all of us commit to policing one another and supporting one another and enforcing this plan and outlining that. So with that, I want to say I'm fully on board too with moving forward with this plan, and I appreciate the time to speak on it. Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. Mrs. Cocker?
I would like to thank our dedicated, caring, and passionate coaches that have attended this evening and have been working all summer, as well as our band program, and hopefully everyone was able to see the performance of Beauty and the Beast, which I think was really outside of the box that they were able to complete that. I also want to thank the parents, athletes, and community members that we received emails from. I think I stopped counting around 100. I would expect nothing else from Wilson in relation to our extracurricular activities. As a former Wilson athlete, former Wilson coach, and current chair for the extracurricular committee, that's Wilson. So obviously Wilson is stellar in our academics, and we are just as stellar in our extracurriculars. So I'm proud of all of those things, and I want nothing more than for our students to be able to partake in those extracurriculars, because I believe that our goal is to produce well-rounded students and well-rounded adults when they leave our buildings, and that's a huge component of it. And if this was any regular year, I would be 100% on the side of letting our students continue their participation in extracurriculars. However, this is not a regular year, and this is not just a budgetary discussion that we as a board have to make cuts and make decisions on programs and extracurriculars on the chopping board. This is a health and safety issue, and although I completely believe in both our school, back-to-school health and safety plan and our sports health and safety plan, when it comes to competition against other school districts, we are dealing with school districts in our county, which has the third highest COVID cases in the state at the moment. And we are dealing with other schools that are in Lancaster County, which is right below Berks when it comes to the numbers. My biggest concern is that we as a board have not had a factual conversation about what the actual risks are to our student population. Obviously, they're possibly exposed to the COVID virus when they're out with their friends on the weekend, which hopefully people are encouraging their children not to do, because many of us have made sacrifices over the summer so that school could take place. However, I understand that teenagers sometimes do what they want. We're not really at that stage yet. I dread the teenage years, so I do. I give many of you a lot of credit for that, but regardless, I would like to point out the fact that our students, while we say that we are in a good place and we say that we have no current cases, we don't know that we have no current cases. Children are very likely to be asymptomatic when it comes to COVID. Therefore, just because a student comes to school or comes to our sports field or comes to band or comes to theater and they don't present with a fever and they don't present with symptoms does not mean that they are negative for COVID. Many of the universities, if not all, that are continuing with fall sports are testing their athletes on a regular basis. The NCAA has required that college football teams test their athletes 72 hours before a game. That way they know who they need to quarantine, they know if the team has a cluster and they aren't able to participate. We are not able to do that. We are a local school district. We do not have the capacity to test our students before they participate in a sports event. Just like Mifflin or Twin Valley or another school district that we are going to compete against does not have the capability to test all of their athletes. So my concern is that in the environment and in the amount of cases that we have currently in our county, it is not the right time to have our students compete against other schools, especially in our contact sports. So although children have, up to this point, shown less positive cases than the general population, I think it's important to remind ourselves that they've also been quarantined for the last 5 months. They were the first thing that we took care of. The first thing we shut down were schools, because we need to protect our children. It makes common sense. People shifted their schedules, people had to change their work situations so that they could be home with their children. Our main effort as a school district is to make sure that our students are safe, which is why we have our health and safety plan in order to reopen our schools. I requested information about our phys ed classes because that's the closest thing that we come to sports during the school day. We have had to change how our phys ed classes look because we don't want to expose children while they have while they have cardio activity. We don't want to expose them to other children while participating in cardio activities. COVID is spread through respiration, and when they are breathing heavily within each other's space, that's when they're going to spread the virus if someone is positive. Okay, we have not tested any of our athletes. So I'm not going to pick a sport individually because I don't think that's fair. But any of our contact sports where the players are close to each other and they're breathing in each other's space, they will not be able to wear a mask and they will not be able to maintain 6 feet distance, which is what we have our students doing and our teachers doing all day long to ensure their safety. If there is a sport where we cannot maintain distance and continue to wear masks during the activity, we are exposing our children to a higher risk of contracting the virus. We don't know if the team we're competing against has 1 case, 10 cases, because they don't know either. They have not tested their players, and neither have we. So the concern is, since although we are at moderate, as a county, we are a moderate level of COVID, which means we either may go full virtual or maintain our hybrid format, which we currently have. That also means that there's a level of COVID in our community that our students could possibly be exposed to. The students will compete in athletics, possibly spread the virus even more, and then return to the classroom the next day. So while we have our athletes and their parents on board with our waiver, the student sitting next to that athlete did not sign a waiver. We do not have a waiver for when students enter the classroom, because we have set up our classrooms to be as safe as physically possible. Children today and yesterday wiped their own desks down with Clorox wipes. Okay, I don't know about anybody else, but in general, I don't really let my 6-year-old get into the Clorox wipes. This is an exceptional situation. I think it's very important that we, as a community, and the board overseeing the activities that are supposed to be keeping the community in mind, that we cut down on the possibility for community spread as much as possible. And having our athletes in the faces of other athletes, unmasked and within inches of each other's faces in some sports, without having any clue how many numbers of COVID are positive in those groups, is not a responsible way to maintain our community level of COVID. So my intention is to keep our classrooms open as long as possible. And my fear is, and my, I would say, calculated concern is, that by introducing extra exposure to our athletes, we are going to bring that back into the classroom, and possibly even just the number of cases that we have within the athletes will cause our school to close down. We have some teams that have a large number of athletes. So if we have a couple positive cases on those teams, then we have to trace it back to all of their classes. Talk about a logistical nightmare. Okay, in my opinion, and I don't expect to convince anyone else, and that's fine, I'm glad that I have the public forum to say what I believe a lot of our community also feels, is that at this time, it is not appropriate for us to have contact sports and compete against other schools. So, and as Reading School District just mentioned today, there's a possibility for a spring organization of teams that have decided not to play in the fall, they will compete in the spring. So I'm not saying that their dreams of whatever sport they play in the fall are over. I want them to play sports. I want my own children to be able to participate in the sports they love, and they can't right now, because as Dr. Kennedy mentioned before, the sports that my children love are indoors, and we as a family have decided that that's not safe enough for them. So their indoor sports have stopped, and they've been missing them for over 5 months. But I'm not willing to take that risk and possibly expose our family members to that virus. So I don't think that our goal should be to see how long it goes. I'm not willing to take that risk. I would much rather have us go 3 extra weeks in the classroom where children need to be and where parents need to work so that they have the children in the classroom, whether that's what our intention is supposed to be or not as a school district. That's the reality for a lot of families. So if by having sports in the fall when it's too soon, based on our COVID levels in our county and Lancaster, if we do that and that shuts school down earlier, then we really are not doing a service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Casper?
I just want to say I have been extremely on the fence with this issue. And I want to clarify that my reason for my no vote on August 17th for the letter to be sent to the PIAA was so that we would not be in this position today. But because of the refusal of our state lawmakers to take a definitive stand on this issue, here we are trying to pretend that we're experts. As an elected official, I really need and desire, as I'm sure all of you would, to make the most informed decisions when it comes to the safety of our community. And frankly, we just don't know enough about this virus. So I do feel a great deal of trepidation with a yes vote. And yes, there is tons of data, and I'm sure based on all the emails that I've been getting filled with data, there's tons of data that support the benefits of extracurricular activities. And that is one of the reasons I ran for school board, is because I love the amount of opportunities that this district provides for our community and for our students. And I want to make sure that we can maintain that. So yes, I know there's many benefits to that. And I don't doubt that our health and safety plan is being followed and adhered to very well in our community, in our district. And I commend our staff and our coaches on that. However, the community has spoken, and they made their voice be heard, and I sincerely appreciate all of those emails that I got from students, from parents, from community members, supporting extracurricular activities. We appreciate those, as I'm sure many of us have been reading the hundreds of emails that we've been getting in the last couple of days. I also believe in the tenets of our democracy and in the political process, that people's voices should get a chance to be heard. Our students and community have spoken loud and clear. And I want to say, for those who hesitated, who refused, who perhaps felt silenced, or just didn't participate in this political process, I hope you can rally around issues that do matter to you and make your voice be heard in the future, as my vote today has certainly been influenced more by that political process than by the data, because we clearly have very little data about this virus. So I am very cautious about my yes vote. But as I said, I do believe in the voice of our students, and they have spoken. So, and that is part of why I was elected. So I'm very cautious, and I would implore to the community that you take this very seriously and that you adhere to our health and safety plan, and that our staff and administrators, I'm sure, are going to be doing the same. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Any other comments? Mr. Schneider?
I'm going to be doing a lot of echoing here, I guess, because a lot of the points have been made already. First, I would also like to thank the community who were both in support of and against reopening. Your impassioned pleas were heard. They did not fall on deaf ears by anyone here. So thank you for reaching out, doing your civic duty to be part of the process. I'd like to reiterate a little bit about PIAA. I voted no to send the letter because I did not think it was this body's job to tell a state governing body what they should be doing for the entire state. But they have said it is our job to decide what happens in our community. And I have concerns. We're going to put athletes in very close proximity when we can't even open schools full time. That is very, very concerning to me. That being said, I get the mental health piece that students get from extracurricular activities. I was a Wilson athlete. I participated in other extracurricular activities here as well. I get all of those moving pieces. I would like to thank the board, the administration, for the effort they put in to a safe reopening plan. As a teacher, I have been part of and witnessed countless reopening plans, and this is by far the best and safest one I've seen. So even though I have concerns, I have to say, let them play.
Any other comments?
I have 13 cousins, and their opinions on this range from my cousin Sarah, who has 2 kids in college. One is a college football player whose season was unfortunately canceled. She has 4 boys. They're all giant. They all play football. And she is mortified that we're even considering sports. And then I have a cousin on this end, my cousin Melissa. She is fanatically writing letters to her school board, posting on Facebook, how dare you not have spectators? I should be able to see my nephew play football and my daughter cheer. And she's like, So I'm going to split my cousins. I have the 6-year-old that's playing around the corner, and I also have a Van Reed football player. So I am okay with my with my kids playing sports, but I do also have concerns. I have big concerns about indoor sports. So because I'm voting yes for fall sports does not mean it's an actual rollover to winter sports. I think we definitely need to stop and take a look and see how things are before we even consider winter sports. But I do want, I have a child who only goes to school and only works hard to meet eligibility. And I can't imagine what he'll look like if he doesn't have sports to play. But I also want them to be as safe as possible and to see all of the, not just our district, but other districts have procedures in place to keep our students safe. And I feel like one of the ways we can keep safe is to keep as the least amount of people as possible. So if that's no spectators, I'm hardcore no spectators. I think that's a lot safer, and we can control our athletes. We can't control their parents. Believe me, my husband coaches. I have seen that in person. We cannot control them. So I do want to see our fall sports continue following all guidelines. And that's it.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everyone again here tonight, board members, community members, students, parents, teachers, administration. Voices have been heard, and they're not all the same. You've heard different opinions and facts presented by board members and community members, but we also have to look at the mental health of the students too, and look at the bigger picture and take a step back and just not be focused in one small area, but step back and see what this decision tonight may or may not do to our students and to the athletes. I want to thank everyone who got us to this point. Big shout out to everyone in the district, the teachers, support staff, administration, parents, and students. Congratulations on a great opening. I know it wasn't always smooth, but everyone has contributed to making a safe reopening for us this year. And I applaud everyone for their efforts. So at this point, we have a vote to take. Mrs. Carroll, roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Is that a yes? Mrs. Cocker?
No.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
That's 8 yes, 1 no.
Good luck to all of our athletes this year. Stay safe, stay healthy, and do your best. 3.1, request to grant Spring Township permission to pave the pedestrian walkway at Shiloh Hills at their expense to make it ADA accessible to Spring Township property. Looking for a motion? Mr. Negrini first. Do we have a second? Dr. Kennedy, second. Any discussion? Is Jeff here?
Have one person step out.
We did.
Okay,
Mr.
well-
stepped down. There's a question here, Mr. Steiner.
The trail that Spring Township wants to pave, is that the one, if I'm facing the building, on the right-hand side?
It is.
Okay.
It goes from the parking lot up around to the outside pavilion.
Yep.
Or education center, and continues back around through Spring Township's property.
Right.
There's a 25-year easement agreement for them to use that. We're going to look at extending that possibly, bring it in front of the board. It's now like a 4-foot wide cinder full of weeds. They're going to pave a 10-foot wide path to ADA specifications.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yeses, 0 no.
Under other business, we do not have any other public participation, do we, Mrs. Carroll?
No.
Any other business before the board, before we close? Looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Schneider, so
Mr.
moved.
Schneider first, second.
Gray.
Mr. McCray. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.